Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, to give you some top tips from what we've learned in Vancouver from our efforts to be the greenest city in the world by the year 2020. This effort started in 2009. To give you some context, it was right after the worldwide economic meltdown. Vancouver, had some impacts from that for sure. We had an Olympics that we had to put on. Shortly after we were elected the first time, there were some shootings related to gang activity, and it started snowing. And I know we're in Canada and you think that we probably get snow all the time, but here in Vancouver we don't. So the combination of all those things together, people thought we were totally crazy to continue to pursue this goal that we had set out in the election, but we did, and we've gotten some very good results from it. So today what I wanted to share with you was the 4 things that we think have contributed to the success of the Greenest City program in Vancouver. But before I did that, I wanted to give you a little bit of context about Vancouver. I know I mentioned that it doesn't snow here. We are in a temperate rainforest in Vancouver. So we do get snow maybe once a year. It's very exciting, but the rest of the year it's either rainy from October through to May, or from May through until October, it's beautiful sunny. So if you're booking a trip here, that gives you an idea of where to visit. Vancouver is in a region, a metropolitan region, the 3rd largest metropolitan region in Canada. We are one of 21 municipalities. We're the largest of those municipalities with a population of about 650,000, and the region has about 2.5 million. Of note, Vancouver is the commercial center for the region. So at night when we go to bed, there's about 650,000 people in the city. By noon the next day, if it's a weekday, we have about 1 million people. So that's students and people going to work. And if you've run a city, you know the challenge there is that extra 350,000 people do not come with their own garbage cans or policing or transportation, and they don't pay taxes in the city of Vancouver. So that is a challenge for us as we are thinking about the policies and programs and priorities that we are moving forward. Okay, so the 4 tips. First one is leadership. I know this seems obvious that any enterprise needs good leadership, but in the case of transformative change, like trying to be the greenest city in the world, you don't just need leadership, you need a leader who leads. So in our case, we are really fortunate to have a mayor, Mayor Gregor Robertson, who's made this one of his 4 priorities in his term in government. We've had many councillors in the past who have led on different initiatives and gotten some good incremental and pilot project type change out of that. But in terms of having such a big transformation to go from being sub 500th greenest city in the world to being greenest city in the world, you need someone in a position of leadership who's prepared to put their weight behind it. So if that doesn't exist in your community, perhaps that gives you some incentive to find someone who can take on that leadership. And maybe that's you, maybe that's someone in your organization that you can support in becoming that leader, because it really does take that to have transformative change. So the second thing I wanted to talk about was having a plan. Again, that seems like a fairly obvious thing, but you need a plan that has both measurable targets and timelines to reach them on. We have a saying that some is not a number and soon is not a time, and yet how many plans do we write, whether it's government or business or nonprofit community, where we talk about making something better by some indefinite point in the future. If you're trying to do something as transformative as totally changing the way that your population uses transportation, how they get from point A to point B, something simple like rewiring how their hand moves towards a garbage can or a green bin or a blue bin or whatever, you need to be clear about what are you expecting of them and over what time period, and then engineers who love numbers are able to crunch out what you have to do each year to be able to get there. So having a leader and having a plan with these clear measurable targets and timelines has made a huge difference for us here in Vancouver. We have 10 broad environmental policy areas that we have set targets in, so it's not just a climate plan or just a waste or water plan, but looks at everything from food, access to nature, the economy. We also have a section we track that looks at externalized environmental impacts, so what we call lighter footprints, so that we're not just simply reducing our carbon emissions at the expense of importing it from somewhere else that's doing the manufacturing or growing the food or other things for us. So the third thing I wanted to talk to you about after leadership and having a plan with measurable targets and timelines is action. So I think even if we have fantastic mayors or CEOs or executive directors, we have clear plans with measurable targets, we don't always get to the point where we take action. And in fact, the longer we plan, the harder it can be to take action. So in the case of Greenest City, it wasn't by design, but it turned out in retrospect to probably be the biggest single stroke of brilliance, was that we had a team that came up with the plan for us. But before we even started that, we asked that team to come up with a list of things that we called quick starts, things that we could get going on right away, even as we were planning. In our case, we happen to have the Olympics coming. In government, timelines are a little hard to come by. There are elections, so that's one hardwired timeline. But other than that, it can be hard to sort of drive a project towards a conclusion. So the Olympics were something that was going to happen whether we wanted it to or not. So it was a fantastic timeline for us to attach things to. So when we started the planning in 2009, we also established 54 quick starts. By the time the plan was actually passed by City Council, developed and passed in July 2011, so almost 2 years later, we had actually completed 84 separate initiatives. So the action wasn't just, once people got going on action, they got so excited about it that not only was it the quick starts, people started seeing the ability to really mobilize projects within their department, or if they were a nonprofit or a business, how they could connect with the city around that. Two huge impacts of that. One was that there are people who like action. So you have the planners who like to sit and work on the long-range vision, but people like me like to see things getting done. So both personality types got their needs met. A friend of mine says that there are also people who like to talk. We didn't really have anything for them except for the sitting in meetings and doing the planning. So I guess to say that everyone in the city sort of had a way to engage in it. The other thing, and I think this is really where the brilliance came into it, whether or not you were pro-Greenest City, whether or not you were one of those people saying, why are we even bothering with this in the middle of an economic meltdown and all of these other problems that the world is experiencing, you saw that we were going to do it. And I think oftentimes in public consultation, what happens is governments set goals, and then people come out to the consultation, and if they're not supportive of the goal, they try and use the process to wait out the goal and try and just make sure nothing happens. In this case, it was clear it was going to happen. So the question was, how were you going to participate? If you didn't like bike lanes, if community gardens make you a very unhappy person, it was even more important that you come out to the consultation and the engagement so that you could try and shape it in the direction that you felt that it might want to go. So that brings me to the fourth thing. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about having a plan with clear measurable targets and timelines to meet those targets. We just talked about the importance of action and how much louder it speaks than the words that we might be saying in government or in positions of leadership. But the fourth thing, and this is the secret sauce, is the public engagement. So the thing about the Greenest City Plan, and I stand on stages, or today I'm standing on a stage in front of a camera coming to you, and talk about it. And I feel like the people listening think this is my plan, or Mayor Gregor Robertson's plan, or maybe even the staff's plan in Vancouver. But the thing is, it's not. It is a plan that is owned by the residents and the businesses and the nonprofit organizations and the labor unions and all of the things that make up the city of Vancouver. That was a very deliberate strategy. City Council pulled together a team. That team set the targets, like the where are we going. But then we pulled together 650,000 people and anyone else who lives, works, plays, studies, whatever it is in the city of Vancouver, and asked them, how do we get to these targets? So that took a number of different forms. For those of you who do public engagement, interesting story that the very first launch of the public engagement for Greenest City, we booked a room, and the room held about 300 people. It sold out within an hour. So we booked another room, and that room had about 500 people's butts that it could fit into it. It sold out in about half a day. So then we booked another room, and it sold out. Finally, we booked the biggest place in Vancouver that you can book outside of the hockey arena, which we thought might be going a little too far. But our Queen Elizabeth Theatre, 2,000 seats, over 2,000 seats, and even that ended up with over 1,000 people on a waiting list. And because this was the middle of a recession, people had to pay to go into this public engagement. And even at that, we had over 3,000 people that wanted to come. But the important thing wasn't that those people came and listened, it was that they came and gave us their names. because these are the highly engaged. If there's 3,000 people willing to pay $10 to come and hear the kickoff event for a public engagement process, we really want to know what's your phone number and what's your email, because we want to talk to the people you know. You're probably engaged and energetic enough that you're willing to convene and pull together your friends. And once we get to know those people, maybe there's other people they'd like to connect with and pull in. So as a result of that kind of organizing over the course of about 18 months, we were able to talk to over 35,000 people in our community, as well as connect with 180 different organizations that represent hundreds of thousands of people. And that allowed us to get a very broad input in. So when it came time for the election, which happened about 6 months after we passed the plan, our opponents decided to run almost completely against Greenest City, because I know there might be people in the audience wondering how you sort of have a program like this politically endure. So they chose to run against this Greenest City action plan, and the upshot of it was that they were running against the residents of Vancouver, because this wasn't a political party's plan. This was a community's plan. Needless to say, we were re-elected. Every single candidate we ran won, and we've been re-elected again since then. So it is possible to build, through good public engagement, a sort of post-partisan plan that reflects the community, not any one political ideology. And I think when you're talking about green and how to move forward on such an issue that doesn't affect us differentially but equally, it's important to be able to do that. So we've talked about leadership, we've talked about the need for a plan with clear measurable targets that have timelines attached to them. We've talked about action and how important it is for the doers to have something to do and to build credibility about the fact that you're actually planning to implement your plan. And then we've talked about how to make sure that your plan reflects the broad community engagement. So that really is what's been the success of our plan. And to talk a little bit about the success, because we're very proud of it. When we started with Greenest City, the rankings of cities in the world only rank the top 500. We were not on that list, so we might have been 5,000th or 501, we're not sure, but we now are the 4th greenest city in the world. And this is in a country that up until October of 2015, we just had a federal election, certainly did not have a national government that was supportive of our policies. The other 3 cities, Stockholm, Amsterdam, and Copenhagen, well, very remarkable in their achievements as cities, also are blessed with national governments that are a bit more, they may not feel blessed, but certainly national governments that are more aligned with their policies. And now that we have one, we're interested to see where we can take it here too. So positive results. We've had a 6% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions community-wide. That's at a time when our population has increased by about 18%. Waste to landfill or incinerator has decreased by 40%, which is a very significant achievement for those of you that do waste management. Water use is down 18%. You may wonder why that matters in a rainforest, but for the 6 months of a year that we don't get rain, and now that we don't have a snowpack to be able to provide rain, or often don't have a snowpack, it's become a very critical issue. Economy, 19% up in green jobs. Our food assets, local food assets, are up 30%. And our most proud achievement so far, 2015 was the halfway point of the Greenest City Action Plan, and halfway through, we met our 2020 target to have trips by bike, foot, or transit up 10%, which means that now over half of all trips taken in the city of Vancouver are not by private vehicle, which is a significant accomplishment in the North American context. So you're probably wondering, what next? Well, we have lots of work to do around adaptation. So like every city in the world, we look at the impacts of flooding, we look at extreme weather events, but being on an ocean, we also have to look at sea rise. So we have a very significant climate adaptation plan. I recently found out we're one of the few cities in the world, major cities, to have an adaptation strategy without having had a significant flood yet. So if you are in a city that has not had a significant flood yet and doesn't have an adaptation strategy, my advice, get going on it now. The other things that we have to work on are advocacy. We had, as I mentioned, a national government that had an interest in a very increased fossil fuel infrastructure in Canada. Here we are on the Pacific Ocean. We're a main point of those fossil fuels leaving. We've already banned coal terminals in the city of Vancouver so that coal is not able to leave the city of Vancouver. But we have a pipeline proposal from the federal government that we have been fighting and will continue to fight. We're just going to court actually this week on it, and excited to see what opportunities there are for us to stop that and get our governments more focused on us being a renewable energy superpower in Canada. And the last thing is the renewable energy. Back in March 2015, we made a commitment as a city to going 100% renewable energy by the year 2050. It's a big project. I'm not going to diminish that, but one that we think is ultimately where we need to go as a city. We've seen what we can do when we set these ambitious goals and targets around greenest city, but in order to be a truly sustainable city, we need to set targets and goals that reflect the amount of resources that we can use as a society, and we know that that can't be fossil fuels anymore. So we hope that you'll join us in that effort wherever you're from. We'd like to see every city in the world set a goal around when they're prepared to go 100% renewable. But whatever effort you're willing to take on green, it will have a substantial set of learning that you can bring forward into a larger program, as we've done in the city of Vancouver. Thanks very much. I'm sorry I can't join you in person, but I hope you're having a great conference. And if you need any more information, my contact information is up on the screen. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.